All
Wonderful.
right, guys, good morning. My name is Lindsay Harank. If you don't already know who I am, I'm the Professional Development and Standards Director here at the Sacramento Association of Realtors, and want to introduce our presenter today, Mr. Jack Stanton. He's the Director of Zoning for Critelligent and has over 15 years of real estate and land use experience. I haven't had enough caffeine. I apologize. Um, Jack has completed nearly 5,000 zoning compliance reports for commercial properties around the nation. He graduated from Cleveland State University with a degree in urban studies with specializations in urban planning and GIS. Critelligent is the leading provider of property due diligence services, including zoning reports, land surveys, environmental assessments, property condition assessments, and valuation services. What makes Critelligent different is its Radius platform, which makes quoting, ordering, and receiving due diligence faster and easier. And with that, take it away, Jack.
All right. Thanks, Lindsay, for the introduction. Good morning, everybody. Hope everyone's off to a wonderful morning so far. Today, we're here to talk about zoning. So if you fall asleep, no one's going to blame you because zoning's not this super exciting thing. But at the same time, it's important and it's starting to become a more important part of the due diligence process. So we'll kind of touch base on just understanding the zoning basics, the importance of due diligence and the importance of zoning compliance, kind of how to navigate sometimes that entitlement approval. Right now a lot of people are experiencing that issue, and a lot of clients of ours are experiencing the issue of kind of that office issue where since COVID we haven't really had much less office space that we needed. And so what are some of the issues that we're seeing with that office to maybe residential conversion? And then we'll kind of just end it with a quick Q&A. And obviously, if you have any questions during the middle of the presentation, feel free to pop them in the Q&A. And I'll stop a couple times when I'm presenting, and we'll try our best to answer all your guys' questions today. So, but just to start off, what is zoning? So the Google definition: the municipal or local laws or regulations that govern how real property can and cannot be used in certain geographic areas. So essentially, it's a set of laws that's developed through what's called, a zoning code or a zoning ordinance development code, and those codes set forth, property development regulations. Is your use permitted? What are your setbacks, your building height, your parking, your landscape, your signage? And those laws and codes are usually enacted by your local incorporated municipality, whether that's your city or your township, could be a village, could be even your county. So I guess since we kind of have an idea of what is zoning, why do we have zoning? Some cities, such as Houston, don't have zoning, but why do most municipalities adopt zoning? Number one is, we need to protect our existing neighborhoods and property values. So, I always like to use the example, if you have a residential development and someone puts a landfill right next to it, clearly you're going to lose a lot of property value right there in all your residential homes right there. So, we're wanting to do zoning to really spread those uses out amongst a geographic area and to protect those values of those properties in the municipality. We also want to help kind of use zoning to help create and maintain character. Best example is kind of that downtown Main Street development. A lot of municipalities are starting to enact, maximum setback requirements, maximum parking requirements, very strict design guidelines to make sure everything conforms to kind of how they want that Main Street to look. Zoning also helps push for the optimal use of land. So we talk about highest and best use. That's an appraisal assignment in every single commercial appraisal assignment. And the first question is it legally permissible? So zoning even plays a big role when it comes to valuation. And then finally, allows for input from residents. I live outside Cleveland, Ohio, in a city called Brecksville. And here, any major rezoning effort has to get put in front of the citizens for voting. We also have, obviously municipalities have open hearings for citizens and residents to come in and make their voices heard. So, it's great that zoning and a lot of municipalities actually value the input from the residents. So, kind of we went through all that. So what is zoning due diligence, or what is a zoning report? I understand you guys are brokers, so you guys may have had buyers or sellers or clients of yours. Maybe a lender went to them and said, "Hey, I need a zoning report." A lot of people are like, "Well, what the heck is a zoning report?" So kind of the definition we came up with is kind of a zoning report's a tool used to analyze our local zoning and land use regulations affecting your property. And there's three main components to a zoning report: our zoning code sections, our municipal documents, and finally our analysis and conformance statements. So our zoning code sections, we typically just pull all of our district requirements. So that's, hey, is your use permitted? What are your setbacks? What's your building height? We also pull our parking requirements to tell you how many parking spaces are you required to have on your property. Like I said, a lot of municipalities are even acting maximum parking requirements to, to really cut down on impervious surface coverage. And finally, in the zoning code, we really want to pull our non-conforming section. And I'll go into this details later, but a non-conforming section is going to kind of give you the outline of if your property doesn't conform to the current code, what is potentially the ramifications if your property is destroyed. A lot of times municipalities make you rebuild back into conformance with the code. So that can offer some issues for some of our clients, especially from the lender's perspective. We go into municipal documents. We request a lot of documents from municipality. And typically a turnaround time for a zoning report or zoning due diligence is predicated upon your municipal turnaround times. So we request copies of certificates of occupancy. We get code violations, fire, building, zoning. We get any special permitting, conditional use permit, variance approval, site plans. But the most important piece is we get a zoning verification letter from the local municipality. And zoning letters are just a simple letter from the municipality that's verifying the zoning of your property. Unfortunately, they vary greatly in price and detail, so you never quite know what you're going to get from a local municipality. Finally, as far as the zoning report goes, the last component, our analysis and conformance. This is where we kind of take an Alta survey, or we look at the existing conditions of the site, and then we can compare it to what's required. So then we can offer conformance statements, whether or not your building conforms to the code, whether or not your use and your parking conform to the code. And then, we offer that non-conforming section to see what issues that you could arise said, if your property doesn't conform to setbacks or building height. So I guess, now we have an idea of what, a zoning report is and what questions does a zoning report answer? Really, we're trying to figure out, what zoning district your property is located in. If you have a current use or proposed use, is that use permitted in that district? Are your improvements, if you're building, your parking, are those in compliance with the applicable setback, height, density, and parking requirements? And finally, do we have any special permitting or zoning relief that allows you to maybe say encroach into that setback requirement? And are there any open violations that could affect the property? For instance, I know New York City, if you have open violations, you can't transfer a property. So it's nice to know this information so you can resolve those issues before closing. But a lot of our clients, they know this stuff already, but they don't quite know why we're ordering due diligence. They know what the zoning report does, they know what it's answering, but why are we ordering this? So number one is managing risk. Non-conformities or code violations could oftentimes present a potential loss of property value or loss of income from a business operations standpoint. So our clients are really concerned about their non-conformities on the site and the code violations. Zoning endorsements for title. A zoning report can allow a client to obtain zoning title endorsements, which ensures lenders against that potential loss or damage by reason of final decree of a court. And again, I have an example I like to use. Say you have a 100-unit apartment complex and it burns down, it's completely destroyed, and the current code says you can't rebuild what was there because you had a non-conforming setback, and you have to build what's currently allowed in that code currently. And so say the code only allows 50 units. So my 100-unit apartment complex, I can't rebuild, I can only rebuild 50 units. So the lender gets concerned, well, that's a potential loss of value, that's a loss of income. So title endorsements help the lenders get comfortable if there's potential non-conformities that ensure against that potential loss of value. And finally, a lot of our clients use this stuff for internal decision-making about violations, whether or not the proposed use is conforming. They also look at us and use these reports for future development. They like to see, hey, if I'm going to build this building, is it even allowed? Am I going to conform to setbacks and height requirements? So, there's a number of reasons why to order due diligence, but I think the biggest is just to manage that risk. And since, obviously we're speaking with the brokers here and real estate agents, I want to kind of go over, when is a zoning report required? Typically lenders and title companies, they have a specific dollar amount in which they say, okay, a zoning report is going to be required. I can't say specifically what everyone is. It's all different across the board, but typically that ranges from a minimum to $1 million to $2 million. And when you go over that amount, they're typically going to require a more thorough zoning analysis. When it's under that amount, typically the lenders relies on the zoning analysis contained in the appraisal. I used to work for an appraiser, so I know that analysis is pretty lacking, and doesn't provide also any insight into code violations or special permitting approvals. So going with the full zoning report actually gets you a little bit more information, and it helps you manage your risk. And then also when a lender is going to go require a zoning report, a lot of times they're going to go to you guys, or they're going to go to your borrower and say, hey, we require a zoning report. A lot of times that borrower is like, hey, I don't know what a zoning report is. What's a zoning report? And they're going to go to their real estate agent and broker and say, hey, what's a zoning report? So today I kind of wanted to, this is why we're having this. I wanted to really tell you guys what's a zoning report, what's in it, why is it required? And a lot of times I would get calls from brokers being like, hey, I have to order a zoning report for my borrower. So fortunately though, here at Cretelligent, we have a really easy to use platform called Radius. You log in, you can order all different types of due diligence. You click on your property. You can even get your borrowers or your buyers and your sellers in there quickly, easily order all these products. It's super simple. Andrew's on this call as well. If you guys have any questions about Radius or a platform, you can obviously reach out to Andrew and he'll get you a quick demo. But as far as information that we need in order to complete the zoning report, really when we're completing a zoning report, we need a recently completed survey. We need to determine whether or not those existing conditions on site conform to the current code requirements. And in order to do that, I need a survey. I need something that shows me what the building size is, what are our setbacks, what's the building height, the number of parking spaces, the lot area. Sometimes clients provide us site plans, but I really love it when we have surveys because that actually allows us to certify to the accuracy of the report, knowing that survey is accurate. And just in case you guys ever get this asked by a lender to provide a zoning report, obviously besides the survey, if your client has copies of certificates of occupancy, any information about any special entitlement approvals or approved site plans, any information about open or ongoing code violations, all that information is super helpful to whoever the vendor is completing the zoning report and allows them to get that report out faster. A typical turnaround time for a zoning report is anywhere from 21 to 30 days. But if we have all that information up front, you can realistically get it out within 7 to 10 days. So now let's start talking about turnaround times. I guess, what's the zoning report process? First off, you send us an address and you say, hey, complete a zoning report. First thing we're going to do is we're going to confirm the location of that property and we're going to confirm the municipality in which it's located. Just because somebody has a mailing address of Chagrin Falls, Ohio, doesn't mean it's in Chagrin Falls, So we have to verify the local municipality. And then we go ahead and we submit all of our requests with the municipality. And we tried our best to obtain an estimated turnaround time and estimated fees. Then we kind of pull all those applicable sections of the zoning code, our district, our parking, and non-conforming, and we put that information together in a report. And then once we have all those municipal documents, we have the survey, we're able to compile everything together, give you a quick, easy to read report. Again, typical turnaround time, 21 days, but that varies depending on the municipality you're working with. Having said all that, we typically have some zoning issues, from what our clients tell us. Open and unresolved code violations. Those are typically major issues from a zoning perspective or a zoning report perspective. All of our clients want to know this information because they want to make sure if they're representing a buyer, that buyer is not going to get stuck with a burden of potential open code violations and potential fines down the line. They always concerned about the transferability of entitlement approvals or certificates of occupancy. It's becoming more commonplace now. Municipalities are requiring new owners to, transfer the entitlement approvals or COs upon transfer of ownership. So clients are awfully concerned about that. Obviously, lack of CO, whether or not if there's no certificate of occupancy, is that going to create an issue? Like I discussed before, non-conforming situations could potentially look at a potential loss of value or loss of income. So those are really big issues to point out in the zoning report. And also our clients are really also concerned with, how did a property become non-conforming? Was it because they widened the road and now we no longer adhere to the setbacks? Did they adopt a brand new zoning code? Or did we do something illegally and repave the parking lot and now we don't have enough parking spaces? So, determining how the property became non-conforming is also a pretty important part for our clients. And now we talked about, well, rather than going into zoning compliance, do we have any questions? Anyone want to speak up with any questions or concerns right now?
I had a quick question. My name is Ranga. When you order a zoning report, are you saying that you need to have a survey of the property?
Yes. Typically, okay, well, just to give you some history here and some background. Zoning reports became more prevalent in the last 25, 30 years because of Alta survey standards. At one point, the surveyor was responsible for putting the zoning requirements down on a survey, and surveyors didn't like that because that's not their job. Their job's to identify the property and everything. So when they start coming out with all the different Alta standards, Alta came out and said, hey, you need a zoning report in order to address zoning on a survey on Alta. And I think table A items 6A and 6B are the items on a survey that a lot of clients want to see, a table with your zoning regulations and any plottable items. So a lot of times, setbacks are typically the only plottable item. But since that requirement of kind of Alta and zoning are tied together, you kind of need one in order to do the other. Like I said, we've used site plans before. Sometimes we tried, our clients are lacking a site plan or lacking a survey. We use Google Earth imagery and a combination of assessor information. The only issue with that is reliability and accuracy. Sometimes if I look at a property in Google Earth, I can't really tell how many parking spaces are there because they might have some trees that are covering spaces and I have to estimate. Versus a survey, I can certify to the accuracy of that survey because the surveyor signed it, they visited the site, they know where the building is, they know the square footage, they know the height, they know the parking. But so I guess, I prefer to have an Alta survey. That's the number one thing, but we're always willing to work with our clients to make sure that they get what they need.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, that was quite the long answer. My apologies. So the importance of zoning compliance. So like I said, how do we determine legal nonconformance? So several ways that we try to go and determine this. The easiest of which is just to get confirmation from the local municipality. However, municipalities are kind of starting to refuse to provide such statements of legal nonconformance. So, we kind of rely on historical records, certificates of occupancy. We might get an old site plan that shows the old zoning code requirements. So we would know, hey, well, the zoning's changed, or we know that there's a comprehensive zoning change there. So, determining legal nonconformance is a pretty big deal to a lot of our clients because they just want to make sure that their client or their borrower, their buyer, their seller is not operating illegally. And then as far as of right zoning, like I talked about, what's the highest and best use of a property? So we're consistently asked by developers and owner operators to research whether, they give us a plot of land. They say, hey, I want to operate an ambulance service business here. Is that permitted? Or do I need to go through entitlement approval? So we kind of give them some information, research that, give them, hey, you're permitted by right, or you have to go through a conditional use permit process. And here's who you should call. Here's timing. Here's cost to kind of give them some more information. So, when I start talking about highest and best use, I always have to bring in kind of the impacts of zoning on valuation. So like I mentioned before, every single appraisal assignment, you have to analyze a property's highest and best use. So this consists of asking 4 basic questions. What's legally permissible? What's physically possible? Is it financially feasible? And what provides maximum profitability? So, like I said, zoning's importance is pretty evident in that it's the first criteria within the highest and best use analysis. So we have to determine whether that current or proposed use is even legally permissible. So this is how land use and zoning regulations can influence a property's value through kind of promoting certain land uses in specific geographic areas within the municipality's border. And also, like, once we're able to determine what's legally permissible, we have to determine what's physically possible and what's financially feasible. And then we start to ask the question, okay, well, what provides maximum profitability? Again, zoning can play a role here too, especially in more progressive urban areas where many of these municipalities are starting to offer tax incentives and density bonuses based upon, number of criteria, say, accessibility, number of accessibility units or affordable housing units. Typically, they're saying, hey, if you want to put in more units here, you can, and we'll allow it, but you're going to give us X amount or a percentage amount of affordable units as well. So, zoning can have an impact not only on what's legally permissible, but also what provides maximum profitability. And as far as navigating entitlement approval and rezoning, so depending on the municipality, special entitlement approvals, they either run with the land regardless of ownership, or they require a transfer upon change of ownership. However, when these approvals are running with the land, they offer a functional value and reassurance to future property owners that the current use of the property can continue under the entitlement approval, regardless of the ownership. So it kind of provides our clients with a sense of comfort, knowing that they don't have to go through the entitlement process with local municipality, and they can operate the business, say if they buy it tomorrow, and they don't have any potential further cost or timing delays due to municipal processes for these types of approvals. And as far as new obligations, typically as our urban areas are evolving, municipalities have found out that zoning regulations are a great way to usher in new obligations they're going to require from developers. So some of these new obligations involved increased open space, like I mentioned, affordable housing's become very popular, accessibility requirements, historic preservation, even the local HOA homeowners association might have a little bit of a play here as well. So, as far as the obligations, it's ever growing, but developers do a great job of taking advantage of them and making sure that they get maximum profitability out of their sites. As far as, like I mentioned before, how, we're dealing with this time right now where not many people are going back into the office. A lot of people are still working remote, and a lot of companies have this issue where they have all this open space. I literally just got off the call with somebody that they have this issue where they're trying to sell their office building because 20% of their workers that used to work there are there, regularly. The other 80% are off at home. So, we have a bunch of drivers and barriers. They're offering tax incentives, historic considerations as well. I know in California, I did some research. We have some, Assembly Bill 2097. So that reduces parking requirements for properties that are located within or close to transit. 1532, that's exemptions to the environmental requirements for redevelopment purposes. 529, that's revisions to the state's adaptive reuse building code to better facilitate conversion projects. And that one's really big because a lot of people are going to be starting to convert office into residential. And, if I think California wanted to revise that building code to make that process a little bit easier. And then you have the Mills Act, which provides property tax abatements for historic building restorations and maintenance. But, as we kind of talk here about the future of land use and zoning regulations, there's two main kind of things that a lot of municipalities are starting to use. First thing is smart growth. It's kind of Portland, Oregon's the biggest or best example of this. And smart growth is an approach to land use and development that promotes compact, walkable communities with a mix of housing, jobs, transportation options. So it's kind of based on the principles of sustainability, livability, and equity. And since zoning regulations are the rules that kind of affect how land can be used in a community, a lot of municipalities are using zoning to implement smart growth policies by encouraging mixed-use development, promoting walkability, and protecting open space. And then the next one, which, you're starting to see it pop up, I would say probably 10, 12 years ago, you mostly saw it on the coast, but now you're starting to see it kind of come in middle America here and form-based codes. So a form-based code is a type of land development regulation that focus on the physical form of the building and the relationship of the building to each other and the public realm. So it's a typical alternative to a traditional zoning code, which focuses on the separation of uses. So the form-based codes typically regulating the size, the shape, and the massing of the building, the placement of the building on the lots, the design of the streetscape, the public spaces, and the use of the materials and landscaping with design requirements. They're not as much concerned about the use of the building. They're more concerned about what the structure looks like and whether it conforms into the neighborhood. So those are the two, I guess, main issues here that are main planning techniques that are being used or implemented throughout the country. Luckily, our reports here at Cretelligent, they kind of, we would oversee all that. We'd have no issue reviewing any zoning code. I mean, like Lindsay said, I think I've done over 5,000 zoning reports, which is way too much. I need to get out of the zoning business. Been in it for too long, but this is just a quick breakdown of our report types and use cases. Our basic zoning compliance report is typically what I would call the transactional report, what most lenders and title companies are requiring. We have a use analysis report, which I think is great for vacant land when a developer or somebody's looking to see whether or not a proposed use is permitted or not. And then we have what we call our easy reports. And like I mentioned, there's ALTA requirements from a survey perspective. A lot of times our clients don't understand that they need a zoning report in order to adhere to ALTA standards 6A and 6B. And so they're in a rush at the end and they're like, hey, we're closing in 3 days. We need something. So we put together some quick reports so, zoning can be addressed on a survey. It doesn't offer the full analysis that, you typically see in a compliance report, but it offers enough so they can address zoning on a survey and get it passed and get the transaction past the finish line. And that's about it. Obviously still we also offer document requests if you just want documents, code violations. We offer those services as well. But does anyone have any more questions or concerns or?
Sorry, what is the cost of your reports? Let's say, $1 million to $2 million property. What would
the reports are standard pricing. So zoning compliance report, which is the standard report, is $775 per report plus municipal fees. So like I said, some municipalities will charge us for the zoning letters and code violations, and some city will say it's $10. Send us a check. We send a check. Some city will say it's $1,000. So typically we go back to our client and say, hey, it's $1,000 for these records. Do you really want them? But the nice thing about zoning is regardless of the value of the property, the report itself stays the same. It's $775 across the board, whether or not you're dealing with a $100 million property or you're dealing with $1 million property. So, the same type of analysis needs to be conducted on both of those properties, regardless of value.
Got it. So yeah, and it's way cheaper than hiring an architect to go through it. And I see here, like Roseville, they charge like $166 for zoning verification letter. So I can see where the municipal fees come in as well.
Yeah.
So
okay. And we've done hundreds of sites in Chicago. Like some Chicago charges $150 per parcel. So, you might have a property that has 3 parcels and you pay $450 for your zoning letter. So like I said, they vary greatly in detail. You have one city that'll give you the whole history of a property, all the entitlement approvals, certificates of occupancy, code violation information. And then the next city over will send you a zoning letter that says one line, your property zoned C2 commercial, so it's a crapshoot. But luckily we've been doing this long enough. I've been in this going on 12 years now, where we have a lot of good data. So when someone reaches out to us, we have an idea of cost and timing from a municipality standpoint, where we're able to turn around that information relatively quickly and give people a good idea of how long they can expect.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Well, obviously, if there's any other questions and you guys think of something tomorrow, I'm the type of person personally, I listen to a presentation and then the next day I think of all my questions, right? So if you're like me, my contact is here. My contact information is here. Any technical questions about zoning, land use regulations, always feel free to reach out to me. I'm always here as a resource for you guys. And then we also have Andrew here as well. So if you guys are ever interested in ordering a zoning report or any of our other due diligence products, phase ones, PCAs, ALTAs, we have pre-screen reports, we have crime reports, the list goes on. And I'm sure Andrew would love to, show you guys and give you guys a quick tour of our Radius platform, and you guys can kind of see what Cretelligent's all about. But with that being said, I want to thank everyone for their time, and I'll kick it back to Lindsay.
And I thought I was unmuted. Thank you everyone for attending today. I really appreciate you taking the time this morning. If you have any questions, you can always reach out to me and I can get you Jack's or Andrew's information as well. So some of you have my information on speed dial. So I can forward that information over to you. But thank you guys again this is being recorded, so we're gonna put it on our website. So for you to go back to and view if you needed to. So just letting you know, we'll have that available. If you have questions though, feel free to give us a ring, and hopefully we'll see you again soon in the new year. Happy holidays, everyone.